You know Halo, that's why you clicked on the video. But do you know Halo? Given the recent launch of Halo Infinite, there are a bunch of new players, so chances are you may be new to Halo. And that's fine. Halo is 20 years old now. Like it or not, Halo is a retro game, so there's a lot of catching up to do. Let's do a quick rundown of the history, the terminology, and the arguments over the past 20 years of Halo. A full crash course. If you're a veteran, keep watching and let me know if there's anything I missed. Let's start from the beginning. Bungie, now the creators of Destiny, were a small studio from Chicago developing games for the Mac. They just finished with the Myth games, a fantasy RTS with no resource management. The game was heavily reliant on its physics for its gameplay. This would carry on into Halo. They looked at Myth and they thought this would be much better if it was sci-fi, so they made it sci-fi. Well, as a prototype. As it turns out, what people had the most fun with in this sci-fi version was driving that little vehicle around. So they made it a third-person shooter. They showed it off at Macworld, presented by Steve Jobs. But that was never to be. Ultimately, they decided on a first-person shooter, like their previous Marathon series. Bungie was bought out by Microsoft and Halo became the launch title for Xbox. It was a moderate success at first, but it caught on over the few months following its launch. It was lauded by fans and critics alike, although some Mac users were salty that Bungie was abandoning them for Microsoft. It actually managed to make a shooter work on console. The campaign was good, although with some caveats, like the library, remembered as one of the biggest slogs of all time. It's like waiting in line at the doctor's office while somebody's trying to blow you up with rockets. We were introduced to the Master Chief and Cortana. All you need to know is that the Master Chief is a big green guy who doesn't afraid of anything, and Cortana is his blue e-girl. Oh, and Halo is a giant ring built by ancient aliens. Halo introduced regenerating shields. This was controversial among PC shooter fans. It also introduced 2 weapon limits. The thing is, in Halo, you're actually meant to keep switching weapons just like a classic PC shooter. The only difference is that you're meant to pick up those weapons from fallen enemies on the battlefield. The million other first-person shooter games with 2 weapon limits don't seem to understand this, giving you weapons that you basically never have to swap out. Another notable aspect of the game is the enemies with a lot of health. Not bosses, just the regular elite enemies that show up in every firefight. High time to kill is an essential part of Halo. When you think about it, high time to kill is more skillful. You have to keep your reticle trained on enemies for a longer amount of time. Oftentimes, enemies who strafe and move about. And you know who complains about that?
You play Call of Duty and...
Yeah, it is funny seeing Call of Duty fans complaining about high time to kill in Halo. It takes half of an entire magazine from the assault rifle to kill an enemy, while Halo fans are talking about how quick it is. I can kill an enemy in only half a magazine? I don't want to say skill issue, but... skill issue. Honestly, the multiplayer was actually cobbled together in just a couple of months, and yet people loved it. People lugged their Xboxes down to each other's house for LAN parties, and people started teabagging each other. This is when you crouch over enemies' bodies and give them a taste of fresh nutsack. I can't believe there are Zoomers out there who don't know what this is. So you can bet, after the success of Halo 1, a sequel was inevitable. Its development was a death march by all accounts, but they still got it out, and somehow they managed to pull it off, mostly. It greatly expanded the story, showing the other side to the Covenant with the Prophets and the Arbiter, the leader of the elites. You got to play as the aliens. It was in many ways unfinished. It literally ended on a cliffhanger, but people loved it even more. It kickstarted Xbox Live and competitive Halo. It led to the rise of MLG. Halo 2 was the game that invented proximity chat, lobbies, parties, matchmaking, and playlists. Halo 2 was insanely popular. Halo 2 is where the multiplayer really gained an identity. One weapon was introduced, the weapon to rule all weapons, the battle rifle. And the battle rifle could 4-shot kill. For the first 3 shots, it didn't matter where on the body you shot them. But once the shields were popped, the final shot had to be on the head. It was the most powerful weapon, but the whole game and its competitive community revolved around it especially. By the time of Halo 3, Halo was the most popular game around. There was massive excitement. And I'd say Halo 3 is remembered by the largest amount of Halo fans as the best. Not just the best Halo, but the best game ever, full stop. Halo 3 was more evolutionary than revolutionary. It readjusted the battle rifle to be slightly less dominant. They kind of failed with that. They made the projectile slower, as well as making it more inaccurate on later shots in the burst. It was less powerful, but still dominant. The campaign was excellent. It was diverse and well designed, although the mission Cortana is competing with the library for the worst ever. Some of the writing was questionable.
To war.
But overall, a fantastic experience, especially the Scarab, an enemy that's basically a giant platform with its own AI. The multiplayer exploded. Competitive was more popular than ever. Everybody wanted a 50 in the true skill ranking system. Everybody also wanted recon armor that was exclusive to Bungie employees. Yes, there was now armor customization, and every edgy kid who had sex with your mother loved Hayabusa. Custom games were also huge. Halo had way more options for modifying multiplayer matches than its competition. They also added Forge, which became important. Forge mode is basically the Halo map editor. It's not as powerful as map editing tools that the developers use, but it's just about the best ever introduced to console. There was theater mode as well. You could go back into perfect replays of each game. This had existed in games before, but it was very useful in Halo 3. People used it to make machinimas, basically in-game short comedic films. This was an early development alongside Gmod videos in a lineage that's led us to Source Filmmaker and many other in-game film tools. Ask any longtime Halo fan and they'll tell you about all the good times they had in custom maps with a full lobby of friends and randoms off Xbox Live. Even with the limitations, or perhaps because of them, people got incredibly creative. Fat Kid, Halo on Halo, Ice Cream Man, Trash Compactor. Halo 3 is still the best selling and most loved. Bungie had a contract with Microsoft to make 2 more games after Halo 3. One of those was ODST. It was good, but it really should have been a DLC. It was short and came with Halo 3's multiplayer repackaged. It also had Firefight, which is a wave defense horde mode. It was criticized at the time, but is now loved by fans. Although that's probably considering most of them got it for $5 in the Master Chief Collection. Not to mention that amazing soundtrack. The other game they released to fulfill their contract was 2010's Halo Reach, the wistful send-off. It was a prequel. Bungie didn't want to be stuck making the same game forever. They already had plans for what they wanted to do with Destiny, and Microsoft wasn't going to give them the freedom to do so. They wanted them to just pump out Halo games forever. Bungie officially became independent from Microsoft in 2007 before Halo 3's release. 343 Industries was founded in the same year to manage aspects of Halo's community such as Halo Waypoint. Bungie didn't just want to make Halo 3 again. Halo Reach saw many changes that were controversial and remain so to this day. First of all, Bloom. This was a major presence in Halo 3, but this isn't Bloom the visual effect that we're talking about. What we're talking about here is the concept the community dubbed Reticle Bloom, whereby your reticle expands and becomes more inaccurate as you fire your gun. In short, Bloom added an aspect of RNG to gun battles. Basically, it added randomness to your aiming. The reticle expansion affected player psychology, making them more likely to spam the trigger and take the chance at hitting a headshot even though they're inaccurate. Bloom was to some extent in every previous Halo game. It just wasn't shown on the reticle, and it was a lot less extreme than it was in Halo Reach. This basically shat on ranked Halo at the time. Halo Infinite continues to have Bloom, although it's a lot less severe than it ever was in Halo Reach. Sprint is another feature that's contentious. It baffles a lot of people. Isn't this just a simple quality of life feature to make you go faster? No. Movement is important in first-person shooters, especially Halo, and what you can do while moving is important. Could you imagine if Sprint was in Halo 2 and you could sprint across midship in mere seconds? The maps have to be designed around Sprint. This means longer sightlines, so it does affect gameplay. The crux of it is that in old Halos you could do everything, shoot, throw grenades, melee, while moving at the top speed in any direction you wanted. Sprint is actually more limiting. You can only move at the top in-game speed in one direction, and you have to slow down to be able to shoot. Most people agree that Halo Reach's implementation of sprint was bad. After Halo Reach, Bungie left to join their even more sadistic masters, and 343 took control. 343 rapidly expanded, put together by Microsoft to take over the stewardship of the Halo series. Halo was a flagship. It was, dare I say, iconic. So they needed the best of the best. 343 was comprised of many experienced AAA developers. Many people from Pandemic Studios, the folks behind Star Wars Battlefront. They were talented. Although one odd thing to note, however, was that there were very few people who'd ever worked on a Halo game before. There was Frankie, who wrote the Halo 3 terminals. There were a couple others. Max Hoberman from Certain Affinity, and that's a studio they outsourced to. He was the multiplayer guy on Halo 2. But besides that, there's very little in the way of ex-Halo talent. Their first offering was Halo Anniversary, which recently had its own 10-year anniversary. It was well received at the time, but people looked back and saw the visuals kinda sucked. They completely missed the mark with the art direction. Other people have gone into extensive detail on this. 343's first mainline offering was Halo 4. I remember the palpable excitement for Halo 4. We heard about things like sprinting and loadouts before launch. We thought it was fine because, well, there'd never been a bad Halo game before. Most people enjoyed Halo Reach, even with its changes. Many people still thought Bungie were in charge. This was the start of the Dark Ages. Unless you consider Halo Reach the start, that is. Halo 4 launched to critical praise, but it didn't take long for people to turn against it. The multiplayer was garbage. The people making it had no clue what Halo was meant to be. It showed a lack of faith in Halo's gameplay on their part, not a good sign. They went for the seemingly safe option of doing what's popular and what works. They copied Call of Duty. It failed. The game died incredibly quick. It still had Halo's high time to kill, but it had loadouts now. Kill cams, hit markers, sprint, kill streaks. They had these incredibly boring missions called Spartan Ops, literally a ripoff of Spec Ops. They had no clue what Halo players wanted, and no clue what Call of Duty players even wanted. It also wasn't great that they were competing against Black Ops 2. The Forge sucked as well. The maps were tiny, with some features actually scaled back from Halo Reach. For example, the zombies in Flood, couldn't pick up weapons. It hurt the custom game community. They murdered both casual and competitive multiplayer. But at least the campaign was good, right? Well, some people liked it. The relationship between Master Chief and Cortana was fleshed out, but the story really wasn't that great. For example, the Forerunners were used as a literary device in previous games. These ancient mysterious aliens that are used to explain a lot of these ancient alien structures. There was a lot of mystery around them. They just revealed Forerunners straight up to just be Space Voldemort, who hate humans for some reason. You wouldn't know why if you didn't read these 3 books. The librarian was an integral character in the story. She only appears in one cutscene, with no explanation, on some mushroom trip to tell you that you have ancient warrior genes that somehow make you immune to being dissolved by the giant ship. Not to mention the terrible level design, bullet sponge enemies, and barely enough bullets to take them on, and simply unfair weapon and vehicle placements. The issue with Halo 4's story was their reliance on Greg Bear's novels. Yes, Halo tries the expanded universe. The Greg Bear novels were actually quite good, but they were almost completely divorced from the Halo story. They basically let him go off and do his own thing. Next, in 2014, was Master Chief Collection. All the Halo games at once in one package? Sounds like a fantastic deal. What's the catch? Well, it was completely broken for literally years, and it took them until recently to properly fix the games back to the way they were at original retail. Off the backs of Halo 4 and Master Chief Collection, did 343 redeem themselves with Halo 5? Well, not really. Halo 5 is no doubt better than Halo 4, at least as far as gameplay is concerned. There is a minority of people who do love Halo 5. It is well designed, but it's still a far cry from previous Halos. They went back to even starts, no more loadouts. You have to find weapons on the map again. But they went all in on mobility, sprint, thrusters, ground pound, dash, shoulder charge, everything. It played like no other game, including other Halo games. It was fun enough, but it didn't really scratch the Halo itch. It didn't have nearly the amount of relevance or play count either. Notice how I didn't mention the campaign? Yeah, that's because you don't mention the Halo 5 campaign. 343 then went on a long hiatus. I did skip the Halo Wars games. They were RTS spin-offs. They were fun, if a bit simplistic. Halo 5 came out in 2015, and it wasn't until this year that we got the next game, Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite took a step back from a lot of the design of Halo 5, but it didn't abandon it. It uses an equipment system like Halo 3. I think 343 does have a better knowledge of Halo now. They've had years to work on it and learn from their mistakes. It still has sprint, although pared back from Halo 5. It's the least damaging it's ever been to Halo. The time to kill is still distinctly Halo. There is Bloom, although it's not as prominent. It's free to play now. They tried that before with Halo Online in Russia, but that got cancelled. It is bringing a lot of new focus to the Halo series, but to you new players, just remember where we came from. It's always worth going back to play the classics. When you complain about wanting loadouts, that's already been tried. When you complain that the assault rifle time to kill is too high, when there's a lack of a battle royale, when the vehicles are too powerful, when you have to fight over power weapons, when you lose 2v1 battles, when the bullets use projectiles, when the grenades are powerful, this is Halo you're playing. 343 has tried to cater to the Call of Duty audience before, and it failed. There are a certain set of expectations in this game. If it were to abandon those, it would cease to be Halo. They've already made so many concessions for the general shooter audience. Hit markers, smart scope, sprint. Go into the game with an open mind. Play it like it's something brand new to you. Don't expect it to play quite the same. It isn't quite like the other shooters out right now. One thing it is fair to complain about, however, is the progression. That sucks. So anyway, hopefully you're more well versed on Halo, its history and its community now. Hopefully you're all caught up. You're aware of the debates and the issues and how we got where we are. Thank you all for watching and sitting through this video. Please do subscribe. Let me know what I missed. Thank you all and goodbye.